All of you. Welcome to meeting number 8 of the Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage, pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, September 22nd, 2025. The committee is meeting to study the effects of the technological advances in AI on the creative industries. With us today, we have Access Copyright, Aaron Finley, Association of Canadian Publishers, John Illingworth and Brendan Roulette. With the Canadian Authors Association, Travis Crokin, the Cultural Careers Council of Ontario, we have Diane Davy, the Fédération Culturelle Canadienne Française, Marie-Christine Morin, and Sven Burdens. Thank you for joining us. And with Meta Platforms, we have Kevin Chan and Rachel Curran. Nice to see you again. And that is good. So we'll give you each 5 minutes per organization to have some opening remarks, starting with Aaron Finley from Access Copyright. Go ahead, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for inviting us to appear today. Access Copyright is a not-for-profit copyright collective founded in 1988. Since then, we have licensed the published works of more than 14,000 Canadian writers, visual artists, and publishers, returning over $500 million in royalties to the creative ecosystem. These royalties ensure that Canadian creators and publishers are compensated for the use of their copyrighted material and that they can reinvest in new publications that inform, educate, entertain, and that reflect the diverse experiences of Canadians across this country. Access Copyright supports the development of a strategy that fosters a fair, safe, and ethical AI ecosystem, one that recognizes the importance of human ingenuity to our society and to our Canadian culture. Like organizations across creative industries, we believe that AI uses must be authorized, remunerated, and transparent. You've heard about art previously in these meetings. I want to focus on 3 key points today. First, do not introduce new exceptions into the Copyright Act. AI models do not create from nothing. They copy from human creativity, from books, journals, magazines, newspapers, songs, images, and countless other works. Text and data mining and the training of large language models engage creators' exclusive rights and require licenses. Calls for new exceptions are both unfair and unnecessary. AI innovation can and should coexist with a system that incentivizes creators and protects their rights. But big tech companies and small tech companies are profiting from the unauthorized use of creative works to train their AI systems. And now they're asking the government to legitimize that behavior with new exceptions. AI is fast and powerful, but speed and scale cannot replace fairness, consent, or respect for creators' rights. And AI innovation cannot be a shortcut to ignoring the people who create, protect, sustain, and proclaim our culture. After all, culture is what makes Canada, Canada. Second, enable a rights market. Introducing new exceptions would undermine emerging rights markets, create uncertainty, and harm the creative industries. Voluntary licensing, by contrast, is feasible, desirable, and is already happening. We've seen multiple licensing deals between copyright owners and AI developers recently, including HarperCollins and Microsoft in November 2024, the New York Times and Amazon in July 2025, News Corp, Time, Axel Springer, and others with OpenAI, and most recently the landmark BARTS and Anthropic settlement coming out of the US. In addition, copyright collectives like Access Copyright in the UK, the US, and Australia are also offering voluntary collective licenses for AI uses and training. These examples prove the voluntary licensing model works. We need a market built on voluntary licensing. Voluntary licensing lets creators retain control, receive fair remuneration, and know when their works are used. It also provides AI companies with the rights they need to do the work they do. It makes innovation fair, sustainable, and legal, respecting the value of human creativity while enabling responsible AI development. Third, require transparency. AI often operates as a black box. Creators cannot see if or how their works are used, and users cannot tell what is human-made versus AI-generated. Platforms must disclose both the works used in training and which outputs are AI-generated. Transparency allows creators to verify use, ensures accountability, and builds trust. Without it, Canada's creative industries face information asymmetry in licensing their rights and impossible evidentiary burdens when enforcing copyright. Building transparency obligations offer a practical, balanced solution. In conclusion, Canada can lead globally, but only if we insist on authorization, remuneration, and transparency. No exceptions, no free riding, no guessing. Voluntary licensing protects creators, encourages innovation, and ensures that AI evolves in a way that respects the human creativity at its core. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done in plenty of time. And next we turn to the Association of Canadian Publishers.
Madam Chair, committee members, I am grateful for your invitation and the opportunity to share the Canadian-owned book publishing sector's views on this issue with you today. As this committee is aware, the writing and publishing sector is currently locked in litigation around the world with developers of large language models over the unauthorized use of pirated book collections or shadow libraries in the training of their products. These shadow libraries contain hundreds of thousands of in-copyright titles, including thousands by Canadian creators. They offer AI companies an easy, expedient, unethical, and arguably illegal route to making their models more robust and expressive. The result has been an unprecedented industrial-scale extraction of commercial value from the collective published work of humanity, without any compensation flowing to its creators and facilitators, authors and artists, and the businesses with whom they've partnered voluntarily to bring their work to the public. This litigation is, in the United States, beginning to translate into colossal settlements. In the Bartz versus Anthropic case, Anthropic has agreed to pay $1.5 billion US to rights holders for its unauthorized use of their works. That amount hints at the scale of what has been misappropriated during the development of large language models. The real value across all AI developers is massively higher. Books, especially those that have been through a traditional publishing process, are of tremendous value for AI training. A large language model is only as good as the works it has been trained on. These models are economically valuable not solely because of new technology. It is that combination of technological innovation and overlaying repositories of cultural expression that makes them powerful. It is unjust that the technological innovators should be rewarded while the cultural producers, without whom they would have no product to sell at all, are cut out of the deal. We maintain that the use of a copyrighted work for the purpose of AI training is a licensable right. Canada's publishers, and the authors without whom we would have no business, are ready to come to terms with the developers of AI. Not all authors will want to participate in such a transaction. That is their right. But we have seen licensing models emerging in the US, the UK, Australia, and elsewhere, and we are ready to do the work necessary to ensure that Canada's creators share in the wealth that their artistry is already generating for the tech sector. As such, we too implore this government and the opposition parties to avoid disrupting this emerging market. No new exceptions to copyright should be entertained. AI training must be based on those principles of authorization, remuneration, and transparency. Of course, there are impacts on our industry that go beyond copyright concerns. We are already witnessing one consequence of the advent of LLMs, a deluge of poor quality AI-generated books on major distribution platforms. An Amazon.ca search on Mark Carney biography, for example, brings up a slew of purported biographies of our Prime Minister, many with AI-generated cover art, some ranking higher in search results than his own values. Not all these books are selling, but some are, and the average consumer has no means of distinguishing a properly researched book from incoherent slop until they buy it. Putting transparency obligations on AI platforms to help Canadians identify what is AI-generated will help build consumer trust. Finally, I'd like to raise the issue of competitiveness in the cultural industries. We have learned that some or all of the so-called Big Five publishers, the global corporations that produce the overwhelming majority of books sold in Canada, but that publish an elite minority of Canadian writers, are developing bespoke AI-powered tools in-house. Good for them. They should be doing that. But the fact that the Canadian-owned publishing sector, which is composed primarily of SMEs, is not in a position to make comparable investments in research and development means that an already uneven competitive playing field will become even more tilted against the domestic industry unless steps are taken to enhance our own capabilities. This is a situation in which cultural sovereignty and AI sovereignty are closely linked. Canada's domestic cultural industries, the businesses that do the hard work of discovering Canada's writers and artists and putting them on the global stage, need a cultural AI strategy, one that centers the interests of Canadian creators and cultural workers. What would that strategy include? That's up for debate, but we can make a few suggestions. Compensation for past, present, and future use of copyrighted works, a legal framework that doesn't undercut emerging rights markets, and selective investments that support Canadian community, competitiveness, and culture. Our publishers need AI that works for them and that helps them be stronger engines of Canadian culture, not that harvests their works as a way to replace them. Thank you for your time today.
Perfect. Thank you, Jack. And moving on to the Canadian Authors Association. Go ahead, Travis.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee, for the opportunity to contribute to your study on the impact of artificial intelligence on the creative sector. My name is Travis Crokin, and I'm an author and the National Co-Chair of the Canadian Authors Association. Artificial intelligence is transforming the world around us. The creative sector is included. While it offers tools that can assist artists, writers, and other creatives, it also poses serious risks threatening to undermine cultural diversity, intellectual property and ethical rights, and the creative market. I will center my remarks on 3 key points. Intellectual and ethical rights. Canadian Authors Association was created over 100 years ago, largely to advocate for the protection of authors and copyright. Here we are still discussing the same issues on a much larger scale with little room for error. Copyright was created to ensure the protections of creative works and to ensure creatives continued their work. Why pour time, heart, and soul into a project if it can be disseminated without appropriate compensation and control? The use of copyright-protected materials to train AI datasets counters the intended purposes of Copyright Act and worse, limits the author's control over their work, the ethical use of their work, and hinders their compensation, all for a system that will later threaten their livelihood, oversaturate the market, and potentially cause damage to their reputation and style through mimicry of their voice, or using their words in a manner the author does not condone. The impact on the creative. Much like a painter's brushstroke, an author's voice, writing style, and creative concepts are unique and create an identifiable brand for the author. Artificial intelligence can mimic an author's voice and flood the market with books strikingly similar to their novels, creating an unjust competition for the author. It also creates a multitude of ambiguity. If authors uses artificial intelligence in their novel, how does the reader discern which parts of the novel are created by the author and which parts of the novel are developed by artificial intelligence, thus undermining the reader's confidence in the author? If artificial intelligence is used to create a novel and directly copies from another author's work, who is liable? The author, the publisher, or the creator of the artificial intelligence system? Further to this is the time sink that is created. Writing a novel can take years, including multiple drafts, edits, working with publishers, marketing, and promotional tours, and unless the author is exceptionally well known, the royalties are not such that they can quit their regular jobs. Artificial intelligence has now added further steps to this process, including fighting for their rights and fair compensation, trying to ensure their works are not used illicitly, and trying to navigate this new and uncertain era. Further, the use of artificial intelligence in writing runs the risk of impacting an author's ability to create, diminishing the creative muscle as it is used less and less. And 3, cultural diversity. Canada thrives on its cultural identity and has fought hard over the years to protect it and to ensure that Canadians are treated fairly in the market. If artificial intelligence systems are allowed to be trained with an author's work without their permission or knowledge, are allowed to diminish an author's financial gain from their work, and are granted copyright-protected status where it is not needed, as artificial intelligence systems do not require any incentive to create, they only need commands. We risk losing our creatives that we hold so dear to our hearts. If our authors are not protected and granted security to defend their livelihood, we run the risk of them stopping their creation, not for spite, but for the inability to survive. This would leave a dearth of Canadian cultural diversity to be filled with foreign creators or artificial intelligence systems that do not create anything new, but simply recycle and reword what has already been created before. In conclusion, Canada should ensure that the guidelines and rules created to govern artificial intelligence ensures that our human creatives, cultural heritage now and in the future, and our ability to stay on the world stage of creation are protected as a distinct and valuable contribution to our economy, culture, and future. Consent, fair compensation, and transparency must be included in any governance created. We have a choice. Do we want the future legacy of our cultural heritage to be created by humans or by machines? It is in my opinion that we have one opportunity to get this right. Artificial intelligence already moves at a daunting pace, and if we miss that step now, it may be too far ahead of us to catch up. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to answering any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Turning next to Cultural Careers Council of Ontario. You have the floor for 5 minutes, Ms. Davey.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Diane Davey, and I'm the Executive Director of Working Culture, which is the popular name for the Cultural Career Council Ontario, which is quite a mouthful. Working Culture is a non-profit art service organization whose mission is to advance the careers of artists, creatives, and cultural workers from diverse lived experience, and to support the organizations that engage them through entrepreneurial and business skills development and innovative research. We're best known across the creative sector for our job board, which is the most popular arts and culture job board in the country. In addition to the job board, we develop and deliver a wide variety of training programs, both in person and virtually, and do related research on an ongoing basis. We recently published a report, AI for Administration in Ontario's Creative Industries, a snapshot of current use, concerns, and considerations, which seeks to explore and understand the specific potential of AI tools for business operations and administration in Ontario's creative industries. The study asked how organizations and individuals in film and television, book and magazine publishing, music, and interactive digital media are using generative AI to streamline tasks and manage day-to-day demands, and whether AI is helping to alleviate the pressure to do more with fewer resources that faces all of us in the arts. The report focuses on how AI trends can be used to help the predominantly small and mid-sized enterprises that dominate the sector, but also acknowledges the challenges and ethical concerns of working with tools that have been built using creative content without permission or recompense. We are supporters of strong copyright policies and that ensure that rights holders maintain control over their works and receive the fair compensation that they deserve. While the focus of our report is on Ontario's creative industries, the findings are likely to resonate with cultural workers and small businesses who are navigating similar operational pressures across Canada. The research is intended to help creative organizations situate themselves within a rapidly evolving landscape, to gain insights into how their peers are approaching AI, and to reflect on their own values, needs, and readiness. At the same time, it supports a broader understanding for sector leaders of how AI is currently being used in practice and where knowledge gaps, barriers, and opportunities remain. For Working Culture specifically, with its training mandate, it specifically provides the following recommendations. Build foundational AI literacy training to equip creative professionals with a baseline understanding of how AI systems work and their implications. Support the development of workplace AI policies to help organizations create clear, responsible, ethical guidelines. Provide ongoing training on critical issues like data privacy, algorithmic bias, and effective use strategies. Since the release of the report, we've been getting more and more responses from the community on the need for this kind of training, along with concerns about the ethical issues. We will be presenting the report in person in an event on October 18th in Toronto. If anyone is there and would like to attend, let me know, and expect additional feedback and insights at that time. The Working Culture team of 4, which is typical of many of the small arts organizations in the community, recently offered itself up as a guinea pig in a pilot training program working with Skills for Change, which is an agency that works to enhance skill sets, opportunities, and access to good work for newcomers and underserved groups across Canada. The pilot program, which combined a series of virtual modules created by Google with several in-person sessions by Skills for Change, has given us a model that we feel we can build and adapt for use across the Canadian creative community. We continue to look for opportunities, resources, and partnerships to build and develop and deliver this much-needed training across the sector while we work to make appropriate use of AI's potential to enhance and augment our own internal capacity and help us serve our community. We would welcome the development of a national training strategy that will help our Canadian creative community make the best of the opportunities offered by AI within an ethical framework. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Prochainement, on a la Fédération culturelle canadienne française.
Next, we have the Fédération canadienne française.
Members
of the committee. I'm Marie-Christine Morin, Executive Director of the Fédération Culturelle Canadienne Française, also called the FCCF, and I have with me my colleague Sven Burdens, Director, Innovation and Digital Partnerships. Thank you for having invited us here today. For nearly 50 years, the FCCF has been the national political voice of the artistic and cultural sector of the Canadian and Acadian French language community. Our sector plays a major economic role in Canada, and in 2022, it represented more than $5.8 billion worth of GDP and generated more than 36,000 jobs across the country. That shows how important it is for the local economic development and job creation.
Le mois dernier, nous nous sommes plongés
Last month, we delved into the AI subject in the All-In event in Montreal. People in the community in Canada have noted two things. One, a real interest of technology related to cultural issues, and secondly, the worrisome note that arts and culture are absent from financing in AI. Nonprofit organizations with a mission of public interest do not have access to financing such as Scale AI. By neglecting the artistic and cultural sector, Canada is depriving itself from important creative sources that are ethical and critical on AI. Early in the month, we were also in Mondiacult in Barcelona under UNESCO, along with the CEDEC, the Coalition pour la diversité de l'expression culturelle. This historic meeting had a final declaration signed by more than 120 ministers of culture in the world. AI is cited as a priority area for action by states. This statement joins with what the CEDEC and FCCF says and asks states to encourage transparency for multilingual sources, protect copyright, and involve the cultural sector in the development of policies on AI. The Government of Canada's response to that position concerns us. No representative of the cultural industries are parts of the expert panel on Canada's AI strategy created on September 26th last.
participation significative.
We ask for significant participation of the cultural sector in developing policies and systems connected with AI. In the meantime, we have to take action and equip artists and cultural organizations in the field. So the FCCF will launch Impulsion 2025-2030, its national digital strategy to mobilize this network around 4 major projects: acting on public policy, strengthening skills and digital skills and capacity, developing new structural alliances with federal institutions, Quebec, and at the international level, and finally, supporting research and innovation. This strategy will position the culture as a probative data so as to place arts and culture in discoverability, infrastructure, digital sovereignty, and of course, artificial intelligence. But this transformation can only occur if it gets clear and sustainable federal support. $2.4 billion of expenditure on AI should not be limited to the private sector and should also support the arts and culture sector in the French language community. We ask Canadian Heritage and the federal cultural agencies to work together with Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada and with Employment and Social Development Canada to make their programs on innovation and training accessible to our sector. Furthermore, we recently had an opportunity to have discussions with Minister Stephen Guilbeault and Ivan Solomon, and they talked about an important moment where AI transforms our cultural anchors, such as printing did so in the past for knowledge, and reminded us that culture is central to Canadian identity. We fully share that vision. In order for this transformation to be inclusive, we need to train, accompany, and equip our creators and our institutions. Finally, the training of French language AI models based on representative data from our communities is absolutely essential in order to value the diversity of Francophone cultural expression across the country. The cultural sector must be part of the conversation and future orientations in the digital sector in order to guarantee development of AI that is consistent, inclusive, open, and secure in the service of human creation. Thank you for listening, and we will be pleased to answer your questions. Thank you.
To Meta Platforms, you have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je m'appelle.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Kevin Chan, and I'm Director of Public Policy at Meta.
Meta employs more than 3,000 people in offices across the country, including our AI lab in Montreal. Most Canadians use at least one of our family of apps to share with family and friends, discover businesses, and connect over things that interest them. Our apps empower hundreds of thousands of Canadian businesses, artists, and creators every month to reach new audiences and grow. Approximately 98% of the Canadian businesses using our platforms are small businesses, and 55% are female-led. Meta is also investing significantly in foundation AI models and generative AI. For example, Llama, our AI foundation model, is the leading open source model with over 1 billion downloads to date. Just as anyone can freely use our family of apps to connect and create, we believe AI technology should be accessible to all. At Meta, we have employed an open source approach. That means making our AI models like Llama freely available for anyone to download, use, modify, and build upon, so researchers and businesses of all sizes can customize and deploy these technologies in any environment without restrictive licensing or costly barriers. This approach ensures that innovation, safety, and opportunity are distributed as widely as possible, not concentrated in the hands of a few. Les études montrent que l'IA pourrait injecter 180.
Studies show that AI could inject $180 million per year in Canada in the economy by 2030, and will increase GDP growth in a competitive environment. We also know that in addition to the productivity gap in Canada that is persistent compared to other OECD countries, Canadian organizations are lagging behind other similar organizations around the world in marketing of AI. If Canada wants to fulfill its potential as a leader in the area of AI, it's necessary to bring in policies that put forward innovation and encourage innovators to grasp the opportunity.
Be a key part of Canada's AI strategy. It gives Canadian governments, businesses, creators, and Indigenous communities access to world-class technology without the cost burdens. It increases transparency and safety and results in more widely distributed benefits. Most importantly, it is the key to building truly made-in-Canada AI solutions. Open source models will be important for Canada as we seek to build our own AI stack, because it helps address concerns about building independent AI capabilities. Meta's Llama models, for instance, are free to download so that anyone can build innovative new applications on top of them, while protecting data and privacy. These models can be run on local infrastructure and do not require data to be hosted elsewhere or shared with us. Organizations, especially public sector organizations, that handle sensitive data need high degrees of security and often can't send their data to closed models over cloud APIs. In one example, the time-constrained North Dakota Legislative Council convenes every 2 years for 80 days. In their 2025 legislative session, they piloted an AI solution using Llama to help review and summarize more than 1,000 draft bills. The solution is 100% on-premise, running on secure, local hardware to ensure maximum data security and control. Here in Canada, we were pleased to recently learn that federal departments are already using Llama to power solutions that are made in Canada and secure, with government data staying within the Government of Canada. We believe that AI sovereignty does not mean closing ourselves off from using models and products developed elsewhere. Sovereignty, not solitude, as the Minister of Artificial Intelligence has said. It means taking frontier technology regardless of origin and adapting and refining it to best suit Canadian interests. Canadians can benefit enormously from the investments that companies like Meta have made in open source frontier models. Artists, musicians, and other creators use our AI tools as a creative partner. It helps to automate repetitive tasks like editing and building content calendars, and helps those same creators reach new and bigger audiences through personalized recommendations and content optimization. Our goal is to empower people to tell their stories, build their businesses, and connect with their communities in new ways. Thank you for your time. We look forward to working together for a prosperous Canada that brings the benefits of AI to everyone. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. We'll turn to our questioning now, starting with Mrs. Thomas for 6 minutes.
Perfect, thank you. My first question goes to the representatives from Facebook, and my question is this. I'm curious if you can actually expand on this quote, Mr. Chan, that you just stated. You said AI increases transparency. How is that exactly?
I don't have to press anything. Well, thank you for the question, ma'am. I was referring to more open source AI increases transparency. And so the way we have gone about ensuring that we democratize this technology is, in fact, to make our models freely available to anybody. And what that allows is actually for anybody, whether it be a large government agency or a business or a not-for-profit, to download a version of the model. They can run tests on it locally. They can poke and prod it. We publish the model weights. And so people have a better understanding of the nature of the model. And then, of course, they can take it and fine-tune it to customize it for their particular needs.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about the specifics of how AI is currently being used by artists or creators within Meta platforms in order to support their efforts and reach further audiences.
Sure, I'm happy to take that one. You know, we and I just spent some time with a roundtable of creators and artists who are using AI. And you may have seen as well, ma'am, the New York Times had a recent article about how artists are using this. There are certainly, if we think about technology as an enabling tool for creativity and for creators, there certainly has been a boom of new use cases, new ways of having creative outlets to bring to life new kinds of ideas, new kinds of sources of expression.
So sorry, Mr. Chan, just in the interest of time, I just need you to get to specifics. How are creators specifically using AI to advance themselves within Meta platforms?
Within Meta platforms? Well, I mean, there's two ways. And one, as I mentioned earlier, ma'am, they are using our platforms to grow their audience, discover new fans, new communities. That is sort of something that's inbuilt into the nature of the platform. But second of all, I think there are actually a lot of artists who are using open source and closed source models to integrate them into their art. And so there are actually lots of installations across the world where artists who are at the leading edge of their work are using data visualization tools powered by open source models like Llama to showcase new and creative ways of expressing themselves.
Okay. One of the interesting things that is taking place within Meta platforms, or specifically on Instagram, is just using AI for age verification. Talk to me a little bit about how that's being done.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. So we build AI systems that help us identify underage users on our platforms. What they're doing is reading signals from users, whether it's the content they're interacting with, whether it's their friend networks. We look at things like birthday posts, of course, with identifying information removed. So we look at a variety of signals. The systems look at a variety of signals to determine whether someone is underage or not. And then if we think a user is underage, under 18, we proactively place them in a much more restricted experience that we have built for youth. And we require that they prove to us that they are over 18 before we let them out of that. So our AI systems are actually helping us determine whether users are in the right experience for their age or not.
Okay, and what if they are over 18 and they need to prove that? How do they go about doing that?
Yeah, we have a variety of methods. So we work with a company called Yoti in the UK, which does facial recognition technology to predict someone's age. They can also submit a piece of ID to us that proves that they're over 18. But we really want to make sure that people are in the right experience for their age. And so we go through a pretty rigorous process to identify them if we think they're underage.
Okay. what are the implications that has in terms of privacy and a person's autonomy?
Yeah, obviously this is done in a privacy protective way. So we use suppliers like Yoti who do not store information that they take from users. That information is destroyed immediately, is my understanding. We also don't want to be collecting personal ID from our users, which is why we have proposed what we call App Store legislation. We have suggested that age verification should be done at the App Store level when users set up their phones. Google and Apple are getting reliable information about what age someone is. And so we are saying, and look, 20 plus US states have introduced or passed App Store legislation to date. We're saying, send us that signal about whether a user is under 18 or not, and we can ensure they're placed in the right box, in the right experience. So we are advocating strongly for App Store legislation as part of the government's online harms legislation.
That's really interesting. Thank you. Jumping more back into the creative side, I guess, AI Studio is used to enhance creativity on your platforms. Talk to me about how that's being used to reach new audiences and increase effectiveness or efficiency within the sector.
In 5 seconds.
I'm happy to answer that question perhaps later. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Unfortunately, since we have so many, maybe we can come back to that question in the next round, unless you can do it really quickly.
Well, 5 seconds. I think historically we've seen new technology has always preceded a boom in creative industries. So following the printing press, we saw the growth of the novel, for instance. And so I think there will be new avenues of creative expression that we have not even seen yet that come as a result of this new technology. And I think the opportunities are enormous for Canadian artists.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. You have the floor now for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. Great to have everybody here. I, before doing this, was a Canadian artist for 20 years. I was a songwriter. I think that one part of this conversation that's really important to distinguish is the difference between when it is a tool and when it is the creator itself, being the AI. I think that artists, it's really important that we think of artists as being entrepreneurs, small businesses. They are very agile. They have moved through massive technological changes, and I agree. They will use these new technologies as a tool. That's not what people are resistant about. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about how can we empower artists as small businesses. And when we empower artists as small businesses, one of their great assets is their copyright. And we have a system in the market to license copyright. It's been developed over a long time. So this is what we're trying to figure out is can that model or can a model, a similar model, be put onto the new world of AI and generative AI where I can write me a David Miles song and it sounds like my other songs and use my voice, but I didn't have anything to do with it other than my previous songs. So transparency, licensing. And then I think the other question that needs to be brought up is opting out. This idea of actually, well, if you're not up for it, certainly with other IP, we respect the IP of other small businesses, pharmaceuticals, for instance. So what do we do when, you know, what does opting out look like? Giving people an option to say, you know what, this isn't for me. I don't want to do it. So I guess what I would like to know is just maybe I'll start with Aaron, maybe if you had any thoughts on how to position ourselves in a place where we can empower. We don't want to stifle technology. We want it to be used as a tool. I don't think anybody's a Luddite here. Artists certainly move with the times, but how do we protect their assets and how do we embolden them as small businesses?
Thank you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. First, that artists are using AI as tools in the creative process. I think there's no question about that. Some artists will use them more than others. Some artists will choose not to use AI tools, and that's everyone's prerogative. In terms of empowering artists as entrepreneurs or otherwise, number one, to keep the copyright intact. I mentioned a number of licensing initiatives that are already happening in the market. That is how artists make a living, is by licensing their copyrights. And we need to make sure that the copyrights remain protected and strong and that there aren't exceptions introduced into the Copyright Act that undermine their rights, that undermine their ability to make a living, and that undermine this burgeoning licensing market. So we're already seeing examples of of licensing examples of big rights holders, for lack of a better term, big rights holders with big platforms. They are happening in the market. They're coming together and negotiating fair licensing terms, what works for them. There's also numerous examples of collective licensing, like what Access Copyright does, happening around the world. Australia, I mentioned Australia, the UK, and the US, and Access Copyright is certainly looking into that as well. How might we collectively license the vast repertoire that we represent to platforms that need the reproduction rights or the communication rights in those copyrights of the affiliates that we represent?
But what the transparency on the side of what's been ingested and what's in the output? Have you seen in any of these models that they're able to give kind of a recipe for what's in the work that's being output? That's kind of what I'm curious. What's the capacity in terms of seeing transparency, and do we able to license a recipe that might involve many, many works?
Transparency in terms of ingestion into training a model?
In both directions.
And the output? So there's examples that are popping up. There's legislative solutions that we've seen in the EU, some of them better than others. Transparency in terms of the ingestion of works into the training of a system is critical for artists to actually know what's being used and what they're able to license, right? Without that information, artists are left completely in the cold. Should I license? Can I license? Is it being used? I don't know. So we do need some transparency obligations on the platform so that artists are able to discern when their works are used and when they're not. So that opens up a discussion for negotiation. You had a question about opt-out as well. Opt-out flips copyright on its head. So copyright is an opt-in system, right? I choose to license my copyright. These are the rights that I own. Requiring creators or artists to opt out of a system like using their works is completely upends the copyright framework as we know it across the world and our international obligations as it applies to copyright as well.
So the idea is keep copyright strong, and opting. It's always it has to be asked before you need it. There shouldn't be an opt-out position.
Authorization, remuneration, transparency.
Interesting. John, did anybody else have any thoughts on the same? Because I'm trying to figure out how possible is this? How far along are we in these other jurisdictions, or are we dreaming that these models can actually give us this information?
Well, I think looking retroactively on what's been done, it's going to be a challenge. It may be impossible in some instances, but I think turning over a leaf and moving forward, there needs to be a commitment to good faith negotiation, essentially. And I also wanted to get on the record that I think an enhanced level of transparency is actually to the great benefit of both the users of and the developers of AI. I recently gave a talk to a national group of library collections developers who wanted to hear from me. They're getting approached by people in their communities who've written books with the assistance of AI and wanted to know, how do we make a choice between getting a book into our collection or not? What has value and what doesn't? And what I had to say to them was essentially anything that is nonfiction based on the current state of AI, don't buy it, because there's no citation. There's no traceability of that information. There's no understanding under the current state of the art of where the knowledge in that book came from and what it is that it represents. Solving that problem would make those generative tools so much more authoritative. When you ask an LLM a question, knowing what informs the answer matters, just as knowing what newspaper you're getting your news from sets context.
Thank you, Jen. Mr. Shampoo, vous avez la parole pour 6.
Mr. Shampoo, you've got 6 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would also like to wish a warm welcome to all of our witnesses here present at the committee. It's actually rare that we have so many witnesses at a time. This study is very relevant, very interesting, and I think my colleagues all agree that some of you will leave feeling that you didn't have enough time to say everything you wanted to say or answer all the questions. questions. This does happen when we have so many witnesses, but I want to tell you all that you can always send us more documents and notes, or even a whole brief if you want to give us all the recommendations that we'll be then putting into our report. And if there's anything also that you forgot to tell us today, because I know that everything that you have to say is very relevant. And of course, we're not going to have enough time today. But I want to thank you all.
Madame la Présidente, je permettrais, moi, à Monsieur Champoux de recommencer son 6 minutes.
Could Mr. Shampoo start his 6 minutes again? I thought so as well, because I think what he had to say was really important. So do you mind giving him his 6 minutes from the beginning again? Yes. Okay, you're on the clock now. Very elegant and extremely appreciated, Mr. Généreux. Thank you. So I'll start, first of all, by asking a question to my friends from Meta. Thank you for being here today. 2 years ago, Parliament voted for a law called C18, which was an Online News Act, and Meta then decided and of course they applied themselves to that, and they decided to withdraw Canadian news content from its platform. And this caused an really amazing amount of harm to small medias all around Canada and in Quebec, and as well as the larger media who were using Meta as a platform to share news. And we saw during this study that, in fact, Meta, in spite of itself, was a way that was practically indispensable to get news in Canada because of consumer habits that have changed enormously and evolved enormously. And we made this demonstration. I know this didn't change your decision, but I did show at the time that we have a responsibility socially to share information and news that comes from Quebec and Canadian news. So 2 years ago, Google decided to share 100 million a year, and this gave smaller medias a possibility of breathing a little. Now, Meta, would it reconsider its position, even on the short term, to give Canadian and Quebec news content once again?
For your question. Look, we would love to bring news content back onto our platforms. I think I said that 2 years ago as well. We are hopeful that the government will take another look at that legislation, which we think misrepresents the value exchange between publishers and our platforms. We are not like search engines. Search engines scrape the internet for news content, and they present it in the product that people see. When they do a Google search, they expect to see news content in that search. So they use news in a very active and proactive way. We do not. We just host news passively. News publishers place their content on our platforms because they get increased distribution, and then they can monetize the clicks that they receive as a result of that distribution. So we think we are in a very different situation from Google. But that said, we would love to put news back on our platforms, and we're hopeful that can happen.
So finally, if I understand, nobody's changed any positions right now. So we have the same arguments we were using 2 years ago, in spite of the situation with all of the news sector. So you're not changing.
Now, the new government is more open to these kinds of discussions, and so we're hopeful that we can make some progress with them.
I'll get back to the question of AI. Mr. Chan said a little while ago that Meta intended to do an AI that will be profitable for everyone and everybody could use it. Do you think that creators of content, such as artists and the people who have rights, are also people who should be able to use AI, and how? And how can you make sure that their copyright, and you've got people here representing that copyright, that they be respected and the creators also be paid by the use that is then made by the AI?
Absolument. On croit que...
Absolutely. We believe that AI is such an important piece of technology that it needs to be disseminated throughout society and the whole of the economy. And for creators and artists, it's the same thing. We believe that this is a technology that is going to greatly help in creativity and in creation as well. And we are willing and ready to make all of our models available for this use.
Use precise words, but in terms of I think you're asking about the act of model building and training models. As it is with the entire industry that's building these AI models, we do not see how learning about information and developing the patterns and relationships to build these models touches on copyright interests. We believe that this is very much an act of trying to get a tool to learn and develop very powerful models that are going to be very useful for society and the economy. And in our case, we are giving away those models free so that everybody may benefit from it.
Je comprends que vous donnez vos modèles.
I understand you're giving away the models for free, and I understand your openness and the concept and the open source. But at one point, there's going to be content that is generated with content that are actually proprietary, intellectual property, and who have, people who have copyright rights. So this government, whether it's this one or another one, are they going to legislate to make sure that there is a system to make sure that that anybody developing AI or search engines or anything else, or in the kind of content that you can find so easily on the internet. And are you going to greet this with open arms if there's something to protect people?
Restreindre votre liberté d'action.
And or is it going to restrict your liberty in some way, your freedoms?
Mr. Chan's answer sort of indicated where we're going with these models. Our models don't store or reproduce copies of any content. So what they do, they have been trained on publicly available information across the internet, billions of pieces of data. Any one piece of data is only sort of marginally influential in the overall performance of the model. And what they do is extract what we believe are non-protectable facts, statistics, patterns, relationships from that data. They're not actually extracting the protected expression from that data, and certainly not reproducing it wholesale or in part. And again, nor do they store it. So we don't believe training these models implicates copyright interests in that respect. That said, Meta, and I think other companies too, have entered into licensing deals where it makes sense to do so, and I think we will continue to do that. But I think our fundamental argument, and we made this argument in a submission to the government when they conducted their copyright consultation also, is that this that model training does not implicate the interests of copyright legislation as it stands now.
Mr. Waugh, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome everyone. Last month in Canada's national newspaper, it stated that jobs aren't actually disappearing because of AI, but rather are being redefined. And that was an interesting article because I have heard doom and gloom on the AI and employment. I think we would see a dip on AI and then accelerate, but this is the first time, we're not going to replace human connections, but the jobs aren't going to disappear. They're actually going to be redefined, which is kind of interesting, I think, when we know that a lot of our young people in this country are suffering right now with unemployment. So, and I say that because I think you would all agree, the young people are the one that is going to drive AI in this country. So I'm going to start first with Ms. Davey. Thank you very much. I have read your work and culture, your administration and Ontario Creative Industries. Thank you very much. And I do note that what you found, 79% of creative professionals report using AI tools in their work. And nearly half of them often and very often continue to use it. So that was an interesting find from your organization, I thought. So thank you for that. So do you believe AI is creating new opportunities in the arts and the culture and the job market? And what are those opportunities, if you do believe that? What are those opportunities, and how is it improving the landscape of Canadian content producers then?
I do believe it's creating opportunities. It is a tool. It's quite a fantastic tool. It has to be understood and used in that context. It does not replace human activity or human creativity, and hence the need for training, appropriate training, and adherence to strong copyright policies and regimes. What kind of opportunities? All sorts of things. We're using it in our own small organization. So, as I said, we're typical of arts service organizations. We're 4 people, overworked and underpaid. So we've been using it for editing, particularly grants. Grants, as you may know, tend to be, you get down to 250 words in a box, and you've got 300, so often we're using AI for that kind of thing. It does help. You don't just do it and then use it. One of the things we learned, a concept of human in the loop. Anything you do, you check, because AI has a bias toward positivity, and it hallucinates and produces slop, so it can lie to you too. So you need to use it. One person defined it as like having a really smart intern, but an intern with no life experience, and you don't. You don't turn them loose without supervision and rigor. So yeah, there are opportunities.
First one that hit on training. So how will that be delivered? You were the first one of the panel today that talked about training.
Several people did talk about
but you
training.
were the first one that flagged it.
Okay.
So how are we going to deliver that?
I think in all methodologies that we use for training now, so that is virtual, in-person, mentorships, internships, everything that, for example, Working Culture does. We focus on, the arts generally has a lack of, we're a very highly educated group, very, very well educated, very smart, but generally lacking business and entrepreneurial skills training. You think of an average artist, they come at their world through their techniques, their creative genius. And at some point, if they say, I want to make my living at this, oh gosh, I think I have to sell it, and now I have to market it, and I think I have to invoice, and oh my gosh, I have to take care of my taxes and things like that. So we're dealing with, already the sector has not a great depth of understanding of entrepreneurial and business skills training. Over that, there are digital skills, which we've all been coping with and I would say again that because of time and resources, that the average organization in the sector is a little bit, has deficiencies in their digital. And then over on top of that is AI. So there needs to be ongoing, rigorous training addressed from a variety of avenues.
Thank you. I've got 10 seconds left. We'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Ms. Davey.
Great metaphors, Ms. Davey, I have to say. Monsieur Toumba, vous avez la parole pour 5 minutes maintenant.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Bonjour à tous. Je veux commencer avec Madame Marie-Christine Morin. D'après vous, avec les changements qui arrivent, l'environnement qui prend place facilement comme ça.
According to you, do you think what do you think in terms of measures for your organization can guarantee?
What measures can the FCCF take
to make sure that AI tools
concerning
don't
cultural goods and also
cultural products
linguistic
and linguistic
matters
ones,
as
especially when it
concerns
comes to
fair
equitable representation
minorities
for minority communities and transparency, and make sure that the algorithms are transparent? Do you hear everything? Did you hear everything?
Pour vérifier que ça marche.
Do you want me to continue in French to make sure it's working? Can you hear?
At first, for a moment.
Anthony Olivier started speaking, there was no translation, and then there were two translators in English.
Is it working now? Est-ce que ça marche maintenant?
Is it working? Yes. Can you hear? Can you hear right now? Can we continue? Yes. I'll just restart the time. Sorry about that. So, what I was saying is that what measure can your organization do to make sure that AI doesn't amplify linguistic bias and cultural bias, and to make sure that there is an equitable representation and transparency in the algorithms to represent the different communities? Yes, thank you for this question. We act on several levels. We were working on the strategy that we created with the various members of my organization and our network, an even wider level in the Franco-Canadian sector. One of the pillars was to act on public policy. So where we're at right now in Canada and outside, in order to bring civil society's voice, needs to make sure that governments act on these issues. So your question is interesting because internationally speaking, there's a lot of conversation happening around this consensus around the fact that we really need to make sure that various cultural expressions be protected. There's several ways to approach this, and our coalition also said this. So we talked about that protocol, that additional protocol that would be on top of the UNESCO convention that Canada signed in 2005. So internationally speaking, this is one thing that we can do to do what you describe. Now, in the field, of course, there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done to train people and accompany them. Dear colleague, I heard you talking about how important it is to train people within this ecosystem. Of course, we're all facing the same challenges. And I would say that we developed a whole way of accompanying and helping people because we realized that training out there is simply not enough to help our creative people, our artists, and the different organizations within this new dynamic. Especially when there is AI involved. And this has really upset the apple cart and the whole way of what we're doing things. Thank you. Mr. Chan. Could you answer this question?
I'd be happy. I'm happy to answer. You asked Madame Morin. Sure. I mean, I think, en fait, quand on parle des modèles.
When we talk about open source models, it's an opportunity to train them with data that is relevant for a particular culture or a particular community. So a project that we've often talked about is to take an open model such as Llama, train it to talk in Quebecois. Now that would be, I think, theoretically, at least it's possible. And we did something similar with indigenous languages. It's something that we're doing with UNESCO, in fact. We're working with them. So we're looking at various indigenous languages around the world. And we have launched an open source model that is programmed to do translation between about 200 different languages, including indigenous languages. And using that model, we want to help and promote and protect indigenous languages. But because it's open source, AI, that means that another community anywhere in Canada or elsewhere could take that model, train it
avec des données
with specific data about a specific Indigenous community to teach the model to speak in another language. So for us, we think that cultural diversity is extremely important in all AI models. One way to make sure that we can protect diversity with this model is to train open source models with other languages and other data.
Prochainement, Monsieur Shampoo.
Then Mr. Shampoo, 2 minutes.
La Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madame Finlay, quand on pense à...
I wanted to talk about copyright because to access copyright, yes, because I know that what happened with the interpretation of the use of equitable fair use in education, and this caused a lot of problems to university authors. And the situation still isn't solved, as far as I know. There are still some authors of university content who have been robbed of their work.
Préoccupation, je suis convaincu.
So I am convinced there is concern here when it comes to AI that adds to this already complicated situation for copyright holders, especially university ones, when it comes to fair use. So do you think that you could tell us something about that? Thank you.
The end of the question cut out. I'm sorry.
Could you tell us something about that? Could you tell us something about that? I just want to point out that we've had a few technical issues with remote interpretation because it does have an impact on the time of... I did stop your time, don't worry. But I just want to make a note of it because these are technical issues that we're going to have to talk about at one point. Yes, I heard you. So, Madame Finlay, what I want to know, I don't know where the question cut off, but I want to understand how AI adds to the stress and prejudice that university authors already have, and how can we best protect the authors of the content?
That question and for bringing this sort of full circle for access copyright. It's not, just for some clarity, it's not just university authors that are affected. It's any author or publisher whose works are copied or reproduced in a university setting. That's what the issues have been around fair dealing and the issues around the enforcement of copyright board tariffs and whether they're voluntary or mandatory. What it boils down to is that for Canadian authors and publishers, and for authors and publishers whose works are copied in Canada or used in Canada, our Copyright Act has become so out of balance that copyright protections and the expansive interpretation of fair dealing has really undercut the market for the use of their works. It has diminished the royalties flowing just through access copyright to authors and publishers to the tune of about $18 million a year. And we have, it's no secret that Access Copyright has lobbied for changes to the Act to strengthen fair dealing and to clarify some guardrails around fair dealing, as well as to make the copyright board tariffs enforceable. AI, when we start talking about additional exceptions, we're talking about tilting the balance even further away from copyright owners towards users, and it's incredibly problematic. We are undercutting the market for the use of copyright-protected works at every turn. So Access Copyright would say no more exceptions. They're not necessary. Ms. Curran just mentioned that it doesn't even engage copyright, so I question why a TDM exception would even be necessary. If it's not engaging copyright at all, we obviously don't need an exception. And obviously that's a debate between the rights holders and the AI platforms, but that would be the message, that we can't further undercut creators' rights, publishers' rights in the copyright framework.
Je vous remercie. J'apprécie beaucoup.
Thank you. I appreciate your answer and your point. Thank you very much. Thank you. We're going to continue with the Francophone. Mr. Généreux, you have the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses. Mr. Chan, you mentioned a while ago 185 millions that would be added to the economy in the next few years via AI. I didn't understand how many years exactly, but it's not just 185 million to Meta, but just the general economy. And there must be some of that money that's going to copyright. How much are you paying into copyright? Well, the 185 million is annual as of 2030, and that would be from a report that was published by Deloitte. It's not we who published it. It was their Deloitte report, so outside of Meta.
I think you're asking a question about licensing fees. We actually do, there are different types of things on Facebook and Instagram that we do license for. So for example, and you may have heard, because I think a previous witness had mentioned this in an earlier meeting, we do have obviously a catalog of music that people can use to add to or layer on top of different user-generated content, like Instagram stories or Instagram reels. So when people do that, they do access a catalog, and we only have access to that catalog because we are, in fact, licensing that music.
Plusieurs d'entre vous ont
Some of you have spoken about the UK, Australia, US, and Europe, talking about mentioning them as environments that are more advanced than Canada when it comes to copyright. Is that what I understood? Madame Morin said this, and Mrs. Finlay as well, Mrs. Davy. Do you believe that those other environments are more advanced when it comes to the rights of authors and content creators? Do you think that we're kind of behind in Canada? Is that the message that I understood? I'd like all three of you to answer the question, please.
First, if that makes sense. We're certainly an outlier when it comes to protecting the rights of artists and creators in Canada. The fair dealing example I just gave is a big one, and we hear from our international partners all the time that it needs to be repaired because it is a significant problem in this country. I mentioned in my initial oral remarks about the collective licensing regimes that are starting to take hold in Australia, the UK, and the US. And we are close behind. I wouldn't say we are far behind, but those markets have certainly started moving along, and it's promising to see. And I think there's a lot of hope and promise for us as well.
Si vous permettez, avant de répondre, Madame Morin et Davy.
To allow me, Mrs. Fidley, you also mentioned the voluntary licensing. The voluntary licensing, is that a new model, or has it existed for a long time, or is it come into being because of AI? Is this something you're proposing? Does it also exist in other countries?
Giving me the opportunity to clarify, it's not a new model. Voluntary licensing is the core of copyright. It is the rights holder's right to determine whether or not and how to license their content, their works. When I talk about voluntary licensing, I'm using it in contrast to compulsory licensing, which is a different type of regime that I think most all rights holders in this country oppose, that flips the voluntary nature or the rights of the author again on their head, where the legislation would take those rights away, say you must license your work and we will pay you whatever we've decided is the set rate. So it's not a new model. It's I'm just using it in contrast to some of those proposals.
Yeah, okay, perfect. No problem.
I would also say that the reform of copyright is something that the sector has been insisting on for many years, and it has never happened. Studies were carried out in this committee as well as in the industry committee with different reports that were actually quite contradictory with each other. So I think that all of that work that has been carried out in the last few years shows that we need to look at this question in depth. Maybe not in a definite way, but we definitely look into it with great interest. Yes, actually, I was in industry committee for the last 2 years, and we looked at C27, which was AI as well as private life, and it didn't happen. But anyway, so this issue that I'm talking about is, are we lagging behind? Is it such a huge lag that's going to be difficult to catch up, or is it still possible to catch up if we have legislation specifically where it comes to AI? Because we know that certain laws have already been adopted in the US and in Europe, and in Canada we don't have any right now. So, and I'm also talking here to Meta. We don't unfortunately have time for an answer, Mr. Généreux. We are 20 seconds too late. I'm sorry.
La cloche, l'horaire.
I see.
L'heure, ouais.
I'm looking at the time. Sorry, I'm looking at the watch.
Merci. Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, witnesses. Once upon a time, when you published something, it was automatically protected. And that really wasn't that long ago. But now we are in this new era. And I think it's kind of an age of digital colonialism, right? Everybody's been robbed, I think, to some extent. If it's been on the web, it's been scraped at some point. Travis, I don't think you've had a question yet. So you mentioned, do we want a future created by humans, for humans, or do we want a future created by machines? And I wonder if you could just dig into that a little bit, because we know that right now, today, there's a handful of humans that are the puppet masters of the AI today. But tomorrow, that role could shift. It could shift at any time. So could you just sort of dig into that a little bit? And now that we are where we are, we know that our Prime Minister has recognized the urgency of this. That is why, for the first time ever, we have a Minister of Digital Innovation, Evan Solomon, and he's extraordinary. He's doing incredible work. But how do we move forward quickly, nimbly? What would you say? And I'd like to ask a couple more questions. I only have a few minutes, so please.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to respond. What I meant by my comment of, do we want our cultural heritage to be, in the future, to be made by machines or by humans, is that, as I stated, it takes several years for a human to come up with a book, to write a book, to go through all the steps and processes to go through it. So it's not going to take a very long amount of time once AI is generating books, and especially books that can be copyrighted, that the market is going to could become flooded with AI-generated content. And the cultural expression of Canada that is being released onto the world stage is being generated by machines, recycling, regurgitating materials that have already been created. So that's where I fear that we run the risk of our future being created by machines instead of by humans, is by having that situation set up. So I believe not allowing a copyright to a machine that does not need an incentivization to create, it just needs a command to create, and keeping copyright for human creators only will allow us to continue to hold on to our human creators, allow them to continue to hold on to the monies, limited though they may be, that they're getting from their creations, and allow to ensure that we have a solid human component in the cultural identity of Canada. And I believe that part of that is also ensuring that we're making sure that we're keeping an eye on the small creators as well. It's easy to look at the large publishers, but there's a lot of self-publishers out there as well. And I believe that's something we need to keep in mind.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Aaron and John, you both talked about the same thing. You said, do not introduce new exceptions to the Copyright Act. And you also said, protect, I think, the emerging rights market. In terms of the Copyright Act, we know that there are issues. So could you expand? And perhaps, Brendan, perhaps you could even weigh in if there's time. But could you expand on what you would like to see introduced into the Act? Not exceptions, but where would you go with that?
My mic's turned on, so I'll speak to that first, I suppose. I think we do need to take a good hard look at fair dealing as it stands, and not from the perspective of overly clipping its wings, but I think to bring it back to its core purpose of being something there that enables uncompensated copying for the use of individual researchers, of scholars, of parodists, satirists, people who are engaging in a dialogue with a work and adding to the original work in some way, sometimes maybe arguably detracting from it in the case of satire, but that's okay. But that allows works to be in dialogue. That's what fair dealing is about, and it was about fundamentally, and it has been kind of transformed into this mechanism for industrial scale copying. So finding a way to hone in on that without overly restricting the necessary exception for people to express themselves in a democratic society is what I would pinpoint.
I want to make sure we're not mixing some of the asks here. So as it applies to AI, no changes to the Copyright Act. Don't touch it. No new exceptions. We don't need new rights. We're good. It's fine. Leave it alone. Let the market work itself out. The other issues that are coming up, fair dealing in the educational sector, whether copyright board tariffs are mandatory or not, those are, and there's numerous other asks that the creative sector has as it applies to the Copyright Act. Those stand, continue to advocate for those. As it applies to AI, no changes are needed. I heard Ms. McGuffin last week say it's the first time in her career she hasn't asked for changes to the Copyright Act. It's also the first time in my career that I haven't asked for changes
Thank
to the
you for
Copyright
that. Mr. Diot, you have the floor now for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Just dive right into the Facebook duo. Like most Canadians, I'm an avid user of Facebook, and it's a great tool. It's regrettable we don't have news on it anymore, unfortunately. But I wanted to talk a bit about algorithms. I'm wondering if Meta uses algorithms, uses AI for algorithms to determine which Facebook pages or posts get more views or fewer views.
Yeah, I can answer that. So there's something called Classic AI, which is our automated systems that sort of assist with discoverability, so what people are seeing in their individual feeds. And for every single person, their feed is unique. So our automated systems are reading, again, a variety of signals from every user. They're looking at what kind of content you're interested in. They're looking at whether you like text or short-form video. They're looking at what you interact with. And they're trying to give you in your feed content that you'll be interested in, that's relevant to you. So that's sort of the classic AI use, and that's very much in play with Facebook feed.
Okay, and just continuing on the same vein, I know that in the past many people have told me that they worry that their pages and posts are shadow banned. Is there any way to, first of all, is there any veracity to those claims?
No, we don't do what's called shadow banning. We certainly have heard concerns expressed about that before. Where we do get concerns or complaints expressed to us, we will send material to our engineering teams. They will do a deep dive behind the scenes to make sure there's nothing kind of blocking a page's performance or recommendability to various audiences. So we will make sure there's nothing interfering with that content reaching the audiences it should reach. But no, we don't engage in the practice of shadow banning.
Do you happen to know how many of those complaints you would get in a typical year?
Less than half a dozen. But we do respond to each of them and actually do a deep dive behind the scenes to make sure there's no veracity to those complaints. Sometimes we find pages are blocked from being recommended for other reasons. There might be something to do with ads that they're running, and we'll look into that and resolve those problems so that the page can be returned to its normal performance.
Okay. Do you think that there should be greater transparency on the algorithms used by Facebook to determine how content is seen?
Yeah, in fact, we have done exactly that. So if you go to our Transparency Center, we've got a section called Why Am I Seeing This? We also have that on our Facebook feed. There's 3 dots next to every post that will tell you why you're seeing a certain piece of content. But yes, we have a whole piece published on how the algorithms work and how and why they recommend content to you.
How recent a development is that?
It's at least 2 or 3 years old now. This was a major push, I should say, under Mr. Nick Clegg, who was our previous VP of Global Affairs. He was a great believer in the transparency of algorithms, and so we published a number of pieces on how our algorithms work and why people see certain content.
Okay. Do you have any systems in place to counteract any bias that AI systems may have or may learn?
Yeah, do you want to take that?
Sure. I mean, I'll take this as a slightly different question than I suppose, Mr. Diot, than the one about how Facebook feed or Instagram feed works. Certainly when we are training our AI models, we do put it through a very rigorous set of tests. So we do the AI when we put in when we actually do the training. We want to make sure that the quality of the data that's fed is very good to ensure that it doesn't kind of end up with any bias. But certainly on the other side, when we look at the output, we want to make sure that the information that's being shared is also not biased. That's being generated is not biased, and so we kind of put it through a very rigorous research process, but also importantly, we do a lot of red teaming. And so what we want to do is we test it, even just as individuals, people at the company, we test it to make sure, asking it all sorts of questions to sort of see whether or not the answers skew. And if they do skew, then we have work to do to make sure that it is free of bias. And so we do take this very seriously, and we want it to be as neutral as possible.
Thank you. Your time's up. Mr. Al-Sood, you're next for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for taking the time to be here with us today. C'est très apprécié. For those I haven't met yet, it's a pleasure to meet you, first of all. I am the proud member of Parliament from Mississauga Centre. I say this because I think my riding is an incredibly unique example of how culture and innovation can overlap. I would say the same of Montreal, where I spent quite a bit of my life. I'm also of a generation that is not just going to be involved in innovation, it will lead it. Mr. Waugh said something to that spirit as well. In fact, many already do. And that's because we've made so much use of technology ourselves already. I've grown up with AI in ways that many in this room haven't. The generations after me will, and have already, in fact, grown up with AI in ways in which I haven't. In similar ways, my perception of Canadian culture differs from many in this room, and that's exactly why I've been consistent in highlighting that striking a balance between innovation and the preservation of Canadian culture is what we should all be working towards. They mean different things to all of us, but are no less significant. There's no doubt in my mind that innovation and culture can coexist. I do, however, believe it's going to require all entities in the space operating as honest, good faith partners. Ça m'encourage d'ailleurs, Mr. Chan, de vous entendre parler de l'importance.
Mr. Chan, I'm encouraged to hear you talk about the importance of protecting Canadian and Quebec culture, so I sincerely thank you for that.
Association is our country's oldest association for writers and authors. As a group, you've seen Canada's cultural sector through a variety of significant changes. From your perspective, how do we ensure Canadian authors' voices, particularly emerging, diverse, and francophone authors, remain visible globally in an age of AI-driven content generation and distribution?
Thank you. I believe we ensure that we remain present on the world stage by making sure that those are the voices that are being pushed forward. AI-generated content is going to be coming out. It is going to be a larger part of the picture that we're looking at. And with regards to what was stated earlier with the models being trained on already existing works, but the idea that it's not problematic because it's not spitting out an exact replica is not entirely something that I agree with, because it can mimic an author's voice. It can mimic an author's style. And it can greatly dilute the field for the author. So I think ensuring that Canadian authors have their voices forefront and present when anything is being put forth at the world stage is solid. And something that we could even look at: when an author gets an ISBN number, it automatically is registered with Library and Archives. Is that something that necessarily needs to be done for a book that's created by artificial intelligence? If a book is written by AI, does it need to be entered into the cultural heritage of library and archives of Canadian history? That's another way that we might be able to protect Canadian heritage and have human heritage moving forward.
It's interesting. Thank you for the thoughtful response. My next question is for the Association of Canadian Publishers. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Illingworth. The association is, and I quote, the voice of English-language Canadian-owned independent book publishers. You represent approximately 115 Canadian-owned and controlled book publishers from across the country. You know more than I do that publishing in Canada has been disrupted by digital platforms and algorithm-driven distributions. What tools, partnerships, or policy mechanisms do you believe could help Canadian publishers, especially small and medium-sized ones, compete and thrive in an environment shaped by AI and global platforms?
There are a number of measures, and I might invite my colleague Brendan Willett to also add his voice. First and foremost, I think I want to emphasize that we're a sector that's, contrary to our position, our popular notions of what publishing is sort of fuddy-duddy pipe smokers. We've always been quick to embrace technology. We're hearing talk about the arts needing to digitize now. We digitized our industry 20 years ago. And probably the area that I would most like to see investment in would be organizations like BookNet Canada that have were catalysts for technological change 20 years ago with the advent of both digital supply chains and also digital book distribution. eBound Canada is another such organization. My colleague Brendan happens to be the chair of eBound. But those industry-owned initiatives have been remarkably effective at doing a lot with a little, at being world leaders in enhancing book distribution, enhancing book accessibility, and I believe that they are the pathway to opening up access to capable and competitive AI tools for our sector. Brendan, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thanks. With the ACP, I'm representing a firm, Anik Press. We're a children's press based out of Toronto. We've been in business for 50 years and publish authors and illustrators from coast to coast to coast. We are finding some corporate and production and operational efficiencies through the use of AI tools. Some of those tools are Canadian. Demarc out of Quebec makes some excellent tools. Book Connect from Nova Scotia is implementing AI elements into their platform that we use to send our digital data out into the marketplace. We're also using some American tools. And what I would say in general about them is that they are respecting our copyright, that they are walled gardens, and what makes us hesitant to engage in licensing arrangements where we are otherwise very active in the international licensing market is that our content has been stolen. A recent piracy scan shows that there are over 5,000 links to our content online right now. Many of those are Facebook URLs, and additionally, many of them are links to libraries that are documented to have been used in the training of large language models such as Llama. We take a cautious approach to this emerging marketplace. We look to collective licensing solutions, and we need regimes that respect international norms and copyright and the opt-in regime.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to is it just Mr. Champoux?
Mr. Champoux, 2.5 minutes.
Député du Bloc que je suis.
If you're looking for another bloc member, you can ask. Well, I don't think we'll have time to finish the complete tour, but maybe we'll finish after your question. I don't know.
Thomas, I was just wondering if we should continue for another 10 minutes after Mr. Champoux and finish the round, or if we should get to our committee business. But I think we'll go to Mr. Champoux, and then we can go ahead.
D'accord. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr.
Mr. Morin and Sven, you are representing Francophones living in official language minority communities.
Qu'est-ce que c'est votre grande inquiétude ou comment
What is your main concern?
aujourd'hui
How are you taking what you hear today? How are you interpreting that? Will you be bringing back concerns with you?
Technologie qui risque peut-être
With the arrival of these new technologies that might drown even further Francophone culture in a minority setting. I'll start and then I'll let Sven answer. It's definitely a worry for us. I was talking about diversity, cultural diversity, and in the setting in which we live, there's a massive homogenous information, and to find your voice as a Francophone minority. There's also the value chain as well. So the place where we create our content, where we make it available, and to the end where we promote, of that process where we're promoting those contents. If there are not process or specific parameters that are in legislation, we may be completely drowned. Yes. So that's a big concern for us. And now we're talking about in artificial intelligence as well, but it's the same thing for broadcasting as well. When we talk about discoverability of content. So it's the same issue. And now I'll just pass the mic to Sven. I was going to point to all the work that's been done on discoverability. AI has changed everything. Discoverability has become a key issue. And training our organizations so that organizations can then train their members and to better understand discoverability so that we can increase discoverability of Francophone work. But now there are new issues that are coming with AI that we don't totally understand. So that's why digital literacy is an important thing. We have to continue to do that work so that we can kind of keep up with the train of technological change. And what I'm finding interesting in the discussion today as well is, are we behind others? Yes. There have been another. We are a bit late.
Ce flou législatif.
But the legislative kind of ambiguity that exists creates a bit of distrust with regard to AI. And I find it very interesting. We've been kind of teasing Meta and Facebook on a number of topics. And they talk about open source models, and that's great. We work with those models. We've been working on a Culturepedia project. We brought our members together to work on this platform within an innovative legal framework.
Et l'idée, c'était justement de créer.
And the idea behind this project was to create a legal environment, a safe space, a sovereign space where we can put data for cultural organizations and they can work with that data.
Maintenant, avec les modèles LLM, et on a mis.
And so we used open source Gemini and so forth. We worked with organizational data that was structured and was non-structured, and we started analyzing the impact in our communities. But we're just at the very beginning. And the difficulty is that when we have an initiative like this, we've been working on helping our members understand these concepts. Well, all of a sudden we're faced with budget cuts. So that momentum is being cut. At a time when we should be redoubling our efforts, given the complexity of managing this evidence.
Renforcer nos capacités.
So we really have to strengthen our ability to work with this data and to help our members understand these new concepts. And I'm excited to have Canadian open source models and to have a legislative framework that's clear and that
En mode, voilà, on est dans un safe space, on est dans un...
helps us to create a safe space. We're in a sovereign country, we work with models and models that allow us to stock or to store data at our place. All right. All right, you've already, we passed the time.
The last round instead of 5, and then we should be okay. Mrs. Thomas, you have 3 minutes.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Mrs. Curran, I'm going to come back to you if I may, just because we got cut off a little bit there. I asked with regards to how AI Studio is helping artists reach new audiences and with their effectiveness and their efficiency in running their accounts. You talked about how technology gives way to new forms or new opportunities within the creative sector. Can you just expand on that a little bit in terms of the use of AI for expansion?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're kind of at the beginning of these generative AI tools and how the creative industry and artists are starting to use them. So I think right now what we're seeing is what you've heard from the other witnesses here, where AI is being used to kind of deal with the more rote or administrative tasks that they need to deal with. And so they can then focus on the work that requires real creativity, human judgment. That is kind of where we're seeing the early developments, I think. So it's like the administrative work. It's the kinds of things that can be easily automated and easily made more efficient. I think over time, we'll see how artists start to use Gen AI tools as assistants in the creative process. And I think we're seeing that across the board, AI being used more as a helper and an assistant, not a replacement. And I think someone mentioned the concern about job loss. Really what we see is AI helping humans do their jobs better and really focusing on the tasks that require human judgment, complex thought, things that AI probably will never replace. And they're able to focus their time and attention on the parts of the work that require kind of human activity, with AI assisting them in that work.
Okay. With AI, of course, there is a danger, but there is also an opportunity. Where's that line as we consider regulation?
Yeah, I mean, I think our view is that you should regulate the use of the technology, not the technology itself. So look at the uses to which AI is being put. Many of those uses are legal or illegal already. It's already illegal to engage in impersonation or fraud, for instance. So those laws simply need to be enforced in the context of AI. But where there are kind of net new risks, or marginal risks that are genuinely beyond the scope of current laws, we would say regulate those. So look at the use to which AI technology is being put and regulate that rather than the technology itself, which is impossible to regulate, I think, given how quickly it's moving.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Al-Soud, you can close us off with 3 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Bonjour tout le monde. Je dirige ma...
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to direct my last question to, as you know, Francophone communities are already facing structural challenges. And in this digital media situation, how do we make sure that these minority communities are not submerged by the Anglophone? Thank you for your question. Well, our experience, and then I'll let Sven continue, but our experience is that without parameters, without clear legislation, things won't happen. Cultural sovereignty, the diversity of cultural expression in country cannot exist or cannot be given to, or cannot be submitted to considerations of private companies that don't have that as their mandate. The government has to legiferate on those questions because otherwise we'll find ourselves in the situation that you were describing. We'll be drowned out by content that does not resemble us, that content by content that is not in our languages. And so there is clearly a role for the legislator in this, and it's absolutely necessary that they play that role.
En complément, mais c'est aussi.
All right, and I would add, and because in our digital strategy, we're making an interinstitutional effort.
Culturel qui travaille, on a une entente de collaboration.
We have a collaboration agreement with the National Arts Centre, Canadian Heritage, and other partners. I can't list them all, but the idea is that we have to coordinate this. It's important to represent our language, have the specificity of our communities. And right now, efforts are kind of dispersed. So that's why we're working on that. We're in discussions. We've been in discussions with Minister Guilbeault. I was part of a delegation that participated, that talked with the minister. And so the minister of AI wants to make progress. But then the minister of Canadian Heritage has other concerns. So this is a complex relationship between these two departments and what they're trying to do. So we're trying to intervene.
Quand on parlait avec le cabinet du ministre
And when we were talking with the Mr. Solomon's cabinet,
donc il y a une entente avec une entreprise qui s'appelle.
There is an agreement with a company called Cohere to
de nos services publics. À ma connaissance,
to provide services to the public service.
Et je ne crois pas.
And these are models that are being trained only in English. I don't think there are any models being trained in French. So culture, communities, specificity.
D'entraîner un modèle dans une langue ou une autre.
These are important considerations. We were talking about biases earlier. We have to, to not have bias in responses. We should have to find a model that incorporates culture as well.
We have for questions today. I want to really thank all of our panel members for coming and for your excellent testimony today. I will reiterate the very always eloquent words of Martin Champoux. If there's anything that you didn't manage to say today, if you have more things that you wish to submit to committee, please send them to our clerk, and our analysts can include that information in the report for our study. I will suspend the meeting for a few minutes and we'll move into committee business. right, we're coming back into session to deal with some committee business. I will advise members we are still in public, so just keep that in mind. We have not gone into in-camera session. We're still in public. Mr. Waugh, would you like to have the floor? Or
What's going on?
The point of today's committee business is just to talk about extending our AI study. We are due to finish our minimum 5 meetings that we set out at the beginning. Will be at the end of October, I believe? October 29th will be our 5th meeting. We still have a huge list of witnesses who would like to testify. So I wanted to canvass members to see if you are willing or you'd like to extend the meeting or move on to something else. Martin Champoux, I think I saw your hand up first.
Madame la Présidente, effectivement.
Madam Chair, yes. I think there is a shared will among the parties to add a few more meetings. I looked at the list of witnesses, and I know that other people have been added to that list. That's a lot of people. You know, if we want to honor every suggestion that's on the list, we'll be on this study, you know, in the month of March. Not that I think that, you know, people who are on the list don't deserve to be there. I think there are issues that, you know, that affect a lot of people. And we should allow as many people to kind of express themselves in a study like this. But we also have to kind of set priorities. So I think that we should add a few more meetings. We can decide, you know, the number of additional meetings that we want to add to the 5 that we already have. But we should look at our list as well together, and to see if there are witnesses, you know, we could maybe be collaborative, you know, that everybody wants to receive. And then to set priorities as well, so that we avoid duplication and that we kind of cover all our angles. You know, I'm thinking of the work of our analysts who are going to have to kind of compile all the discussions. It'll add a bit of variety. So I don't have any specific preferences. You know, if we to add 2 or 3 meetings, I think it's 2 more meetings would be good. And then if we need to add more, we can keep that door open. But I think that would force us as well to reevaluate the list that we have and to make decisions.
Thomas.
Sure, I would agree with my colleague, Mr. Champoux. We would suggest adding 2 more meetings. So that would be after. No, it wouldn't. We would have 1 more week before the break, right? Okay. So if we were to add 2 more meetings, that would take us up to the break. Anyways, I think I would agree that we need to refine our lists, I think, as parties. I don't feel the need to hear from every single individual that wants to come to this table. I think eventually it becomes repetitive. Certainly, we want to make sure that the main points are made and considered in the report. To date, we have not heard from a number of individuals or organizations that would represent more of the creative sector, for example, you know, video game creation or digital creators, you know, and so I think we have a responsibility to hear from some of those folks. I think that we can get a very good sampling with 2 more meetings, and then, of course, the acceptance of written briefs, which anyone who wants their voice to be heard on this topic has the opportunity to submit. So that would be my suggestion, is that we agree to 2 more meetings. If at that point in time, of course, we feel that we still haven't heard from enough, you know, once again, we can expand.
Mr. Toumba.
Mr. Toumba. Thank you, Madam Chair.
On est d'accord, on pourrait être d'accord.
I think we agree with regard to the meetings. With regard to Ms. Thomas's comments about witness and their background, you know, I was recently in Kelowna at a conference, and in a workshop, I participated in an AI workshop and the impact on children at a later stage in life. I think we need to look at the impact of AI on children as well. I think that would help us in our study.
I think we're all in agreement. We had a chance to chat a bit, and I think it all makes sense. I like the idea of actually, you know, relooking at the witness list. We want to get the most out of the study. That's what we know. And we know that when we start to hearing the same thing from multiple people, then we're not necessarily getting the best thing. So I think that if we get a chance to, I think that's a good move. And then if we get to the seventh, if we get to the end of that second, let's say our seventh in total, and we're like, oh, clearly we're not there, or we say we're at it. But I think we're getting a good picture, but there's still more to be done, and we need to be a bit more strategic, I think. And I think what we're all saying is we can look at that list and go, you know what, we haven't heard from specific digital creators. Video games is a good one. There's voices that I think we want to make sure that we're hearing, and even from the industry, it's going to be helpful to hear from industry who's kind of like, what is possible? I keep on asking, like, what it's going to be helpful for us to know what the models are capable of doing when it comes to licensing and regulation. So I think that would be a great part of the conversation. But happy where this is going as well. I'm totally happy with it. Yeah.
Mr. Généreux.
Mr. Généreux. Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with my colleagues, and I will, but there was an article in La Presse about a week ago on a creator in Quebec. So in addition to being a creator, he purchased a church in which he installed servers, and he's trying to make the collection, he's trying to deposit and make the collection of artists' works as independent or autonomous as possible. I would be interested in speaking with that person. We're in actually trying to get in touch with him. But I would like to hear what he has to say. I'd like him to appear here. So, because that's an important thing in terms of sovereignty, the sovereignty of work. And he's an artist himself as well. So he would be an excellent witness. And we're also trying to get in touch with 2 or 3 other people who create with AI. We've made a lot of jokes with Mr. Miles about, my ability to sing and Mr. Miles' much better ability to sing. Now, I don't know anything about music or songwriting. People that create songs out of their imagination. But but one day that work could end up on a platform. So I agree with everything everybody has said. Maybe we should refine the list, but I would like to submit new names quickly to the clerk with respect to other artists. All right, that seems very interesting.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the discussion, and I completely agree that 2 more meetings would be fantastic. I'm wondering if the clerk can resend the list, highlight who we've already heard from, or separate them, whatever is easiest, and perhaps we can look at that. And as Mr. Généreux was asking, I know that we have a lot of names already, but are there some that are missing? Some of those voices, in the video game design section or whatever it is, that could be added in advance of that.
Mr. Miles? Good. I think we're all on the same page.
I think that's good. I was going to ask about the same thing, just about knowing who's been invited and where the list is at, and then we can. I think maybe do we want to talk about how we're going to do that? Like we'll
do it within parties, right?
Sure.
So we'll resend the list. It's good. We're all talking over each other. I apologize. We'll have the clerk resend the list, and within each party, we'll prioritize the witnesses we really want to see. You can add new witnesses, perhaps that we haven't heard from, that we've heard a couple of people say. And so just among our own teams, we'll prioritize the people we really want to see, and we'll make sure that our final meetings are productive. Ms. Thomas?
And sorry, just maybe a note on that. Maybe we could agree to have that to the clerk can the clerk get the list to us by tomorrow? Yeah. I would imagine, right? Yeah. Okay, and then so maybe I don't know. Would we agree to have it to the clerk by the end of Friday or by start of what? A few names for Friday. So just because you're going to need
list on Friday.
Would that be reasonable if we were able to resubmit our lists as parties at end of Friday? Okay.
Okay. Meeting adjourned.